Hey guys, Rio here, and welcome back to another hashtag daily tutorial here on TGODdesigns. Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to be going over the basics of color grading. Yes, I said color grading. Color grading 2D intros in Adobe After Effects using magic bullet looks and a few other tricks and tips here and there. Before this starts, I want to address a pet peeve of mine. Why y'all calling it color correction? Oh, I'm about to. Okay, I'm gonna hold back, but I lose my mind anytime someone says, "What's your CC?" or like, "What's the color correction?" It's not color correction. It's like, this is a filmmaker's pet peeve, but color correction refers to the color space work when you match the colors, the warmth, the vibrance, and the temperature of all the clips in your scene. Whereas color grading refers to the creative process of stylizing your shot using what I'm going to be showing you today. So that's a quick thing. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time in the tutorial, but it triggers me every time someone says color correction, and I know y'all are gonna go down in the comments and start typing color correction and CC and stuff, and I know what's gonna happen, but I thought I'd address it. So let's get into it. So this is an ungraded intro, and then this is it with the grade. So you can see a massive difference, some diffusion, glow, vignetting, a little bit of edge softness. Basically, yeah, that's what color grading can do, and it's very important. Like, this would look like a mediocre intro. This looks like you balling out on some crazy, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Okay, so the first thing that I usually do is I pre-comp all of my work. I do the color grading last because there's no point color grading first thing when you're making an intro, because it's just going to make all your RAM previews really long, and nobody likes really long RAM previews that take forever to render. So I usually do color grading at the end, even if it makes all the work I do before look kind of ugly. I'll know that when I get to the color grading part, it's going to look a lot better. So I usually take everything that I've done and I pre-comp it. And my naming scheme is the first thing I do is name my main comp, and then if I pre-comp it again, I do main comp. I name it main comp, and then I put in brackets like plus one, so that I know this is main comp but one level up because I pre-comped it. So I mean, that's the way I do it. You obviously don't have to do that. That's just the way I like to do things. So I usually pre-comp everything, and then I add an adjustment layer on top called grade, and that's where I apply magic bullet looks. Now I'm going to delete this, or I'll just hide it, and I'll start from scratch. So for those of you who don't know, magic bullet looks is a plugin from Red Giant. It's in the Trapcode suite, and it's basically a plugin for After Effects that allows you to apply some next level color grading and color correction. It can be used for color correction too, to any of your work. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply magic bullet looks and click on edit there, and you'll see it opens up this whole new interface. And when you hover over here to the right, it brings up your controls. If you hover over here to the left, it brings up pre-built looks, which are fine, but I never recommend using pre-built looks. Color grading is not something that's just plug and play. It requires a lot of manipulation and precise adjustment for each individual project, because every project's different. So please don't go and just slap on presets. Take some time to learn what each, or at least what a few, like the core ones that I'm going to be going over today, learn what they do, and I promise you will not regret it. So I usually start off with a little bit of a pop, and that just crispifies everything. You'll see when I jack it up to 100%, you'll see what that does. It just kind of almost sharpens the image a little bit, and hardens the edges. So I usually go to, oh god, I'm sorry, this is really tiny. It's because I have like a large resolution, so I'm gonna do my best to just really zoom in whenever I do something. So I usually like to take the pop to about 10. Oop, sorry, that didn't work. 10. And that usually serves the purpose pretty well. You see, you can toggle it on and off by going down here to where it says pop and then toggling on and off. It's very subtle, very subtle. You can do more if you want, but I like color grading to be subtle because I think I said this once to someone who asked advice on color grading. Like, color grading is like, it's like, I forget how I described it. It's easy to overdo, and you should never overdo it. You should always go like subtle, but make it noticeable. I don't know how to describe it. I said some sort of analogy, but I can't remember it for the life of me. But remember, subtlety is key. I don't know why I applied curves. That's not quite yet. The second thing I usually do is Colorista. And I apply that to the subject right here first. I think I sometimes, depending on what I like, I do another Colorista in the post as well. But I apply another Colorista here and usually tweak with the shadows, midtones, and highlights to give it more of a vibrant feel. So I usually go a little bit lower on the shadows. Midtones generally go up and highlights go up as well. And I'll bring down the shadows a bit more. So you see that, there you go, that's a close-up on them. You just kind of tweak them. You'll see that it gives it kind of a more, I'll toggle it on and off. Yet again, subtle, but you'll notice the difference when the entire grade is done. Alright, and then there's inbuilt curves in Colorista, and you could of course mess with those. I usually don't mess with the curves in Colorista, just because I apply curves, like the actual curves later. And then that's usually all I do for the subject. For the matte category, for matte I usually go to, oop, let me pull that up again. For matte I usually go to just regular diffusion and drag that down to where it has the matte, and you'll see that it applies this kind of predefined default diffusion, and that's usually pretty good. But I usually, or I of course like to tweak it because you should never just leave things at default. So I bring my size down just a little. I mean, this is just the way I usually go about things. Of course, for each intro, you're gonna have to feel out these controls and play with them and get the look that you want to go for. This is just basically how I use it. Less copy, like less of you copying my, my settings, because these probably won't work for a lot of other intros. But I usually get the size to be just kind of where it highlights the main subject, because you want to bring focus to the main subject of your intro, which in this case is the name. And I adjust the glow a little bit to kind of get the highlights on the text to pop, but I don't want to overexpose them, so I usually go a little bit down. You never want to overexpose anything. And then highlights only kind of shifts where the diffusion affects. So if I bring highlights only all the way up to 100%, it does less on the text because the text is the highlight part because it's white, very bright. So you can kind of play with that. Less on the highlights only means that it'll highlight the highlights more. So I'm gonna go to about 50 there. And then highlight bias, I'm not sure how to describe it, but you can play around with it and see exactly what it does. So probably around there. And then you can change the color of the diffuse overlay. I usually bring mine to the same color as the main theme of the intro, which in this case is blue. Oop. And exposure compensation just literally alters the exposure, which for the most part you probably don't want to do. So I'm going to go to 0 on that. And then I'll play with the highlight bias now again. And you'll see that kind of gives it a glow. Now the point is on the diffusion is to go a little bit overboard on the glow and the diffusion, because you're going to go ahead and crush that later with a curves effect. And that will even out the diffusion. So I'm going to go over here to lens, and I'm not going to apply a vignette in Magic Bullet Looks, and I'll go over that in just a second. I usually, chromatic aberration goes well with some intros, not 2D most of the time. Haze flare, I used to do a lot of that. I do less of that now, just because I prefer to use the diffusion instead of hazing. Not hazing in a traditional sense, I guess. But the one thing I do like to do in the lens category is apply edge softness right here. So I apply that down to the lens, and you'll see what this does is it softens out the edges. And of course you can go ahead and edit this. So I want to bring the aspect up, which basically makes it more ellipse in shape. So changing the aspect is going to make it more elliptical. I don't know. Elliptical is like the machine at the gym. I'm not sure that's the right word. And then the spread changes, or let me bring down the radius just so you can see what the spread does. So when you bring your radius down, you'll see that there are two things. The first thing is this inner ring, which is the spread, which is where the blur starts, and this outer ring is where the blur ends. So at this outer ring, it'll be the maximum blur, and then everything after will just be that same amount of blur. But between the two rings is where the transition happens. So between this ring and the outer ring right here, it's going to go from 0% all the way up to its maximum blur. And you can define what the maximum blur is with this blur size right here. I usually like to go to 3, or if I'm feeling really saucy, maybe 4. Anything above that is like super blurry, and it's like it blows out and it's too much. Remember, subtlety is key. So I might even go down to 2 for this one, just to get those edges softened but totally still visible. Maybe 3, and I'll just bring the radius out a little bit. So there we go, and I'm gonna bring the radius out so that the corners just touch the outer ring. So you see that the corners are just touching the outer ring. And then I'm going to bring the spread just to where my text is, so that way the text doesn't get blurred, because it's still within the first circle, but everything between the first and second circle will slowly, gradually gets blurred out. And that's pretty much that. Obviously you can move it around, but I'm going to keep mine centered. Because I don't have anything that's off-centered, and it wouldn't make sense to not center my edge softening. Okay, so that's usually how I do the edge softness. Of course, adjust to your intro as per need, and I'm going to go ahead and deselect that. Nice. Now comes the sort of final steps here. So I'm going to go to the post category right here down at the bottom of MBL. And I'm going to, sometimes I like to do another Colorista. So I'm going to double click that, and that'll add that. And then I'm also going to add a curves adjustment right there. And I just double click that to add it. So now you see that I have my Colorista and curves. And now with the, actually I guess you don't really need curves since Colorista has curves in it. So I'll go ahead and delete my curves. And with the Colorista, I'm just going to, yet again, mess around with the shadows to kind of crush the diffusion, because I want the diffusion to be more subtle. And then there we go, play with the highlights to get that going. Very nice. And then you can play around with the hue, saturation, and lightness, actually, which I find is an interesting part of Colorista. But I usually don't, just because, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, it's messing with it too much, you know? Don't mess with it. Don't mess with it too much. So you can play around with it, but I usually don't, but that's just me. But for the sake of this tutorial, I will play around with it a little bit. I'll just bring up the, bring it in, brings down the saturation, so you see it gets like more desaturated, but bring it out increases that saturation, so you see it gets more and more saturated as I bring it out. And you can move it left and right to change the hue, which is interesting. to say the least. I think I'm gonna reset this. I think that's the reset button. Oh no, that's the reset button. Yeah, I got a little bit too saucy with it there. So I'm gonna go ahead and redo my shadows, midtones, and highlights. Very nice. And then I'm gonna play with the curves, not the hue, saturation, lightness. And just kind of feel out the curves. There's no one way to do it. Just tweak it to your liking per intro. And as you can see there, we definitely crushed out the diffusion. So I'll turn on and off the Colorista. So the diffusion is very noticeable, and we kind of crushed it out right here, which looks pretty darn good in my opinion. And that's usually where I end it. I don't like to go overboard with my color grading, and that's just personal preference. You can overdo the heck out of it and make it your style, but I personally just don't think it looks that good when you overdo it. Even to the point where I'll finish my grade, like that's how it looks right now. And this is all good and dandy. Oop, let me zoom in here. Like this is all good and dandy, but I even like to go to my grade and then go to where I have my effect and change the strength down to 75. And that's just a good number to make sure that I'm keeping balance and I'm not overdoing my grade. So yep, that's it. And you can turn it on and off to see kind of what you've done. So it's just a nice kind of glow and dreamy kind of look. And then I like to finish it off with a vignette. Now, I use the vignette that comes with Motion V2, so I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this. I use the vignette that comes with Motion V2, so I go here to vignette, and I use this guy, and it just makes a vignette for me, and you can tweak it. However, I know a lot of you don't have Motion V2, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete that and just create it from scratch here. So I go up to the shape tool, and I select the ellipse by holding the shape tool and going down to ellipse. And then I double click on ellipse right there, and then I go up to the same thing and create a rectangle and double click the rectangle. So now I have these two shapes. I go down to the contents of my shape layer and then go to merge paths, and in the merge paths I go to exclude intersections, and that basically just gets the outside bit. And then I go to my fill here, I change it to black, and then that's pretty good. Then I just apply a Gaussian blur to it. I used to say Gaussian, but now it's Gaussian, because I watched a lot of tutorials that just called it a Gaussian blur, and I think that's the right way to say it. So I apply a Gaussian blur to that layer, and I just bring up the blur amount to, I usually go to like 350-ish. Actually, don't do Gaussian blur. Just remember the key point. Don't do Gaussian blur, do fast blur. Oh, Gaussian blur, what a saucy effect. Alright, and then repeat edge pixels, and then 350 on the blurriness. And that's gonna make sure that we don't get any shadows coming off the edges there. And then maybe even 400. I'm feeling a little bit risky today. And there we go. And then what I like to do is set it to classic color burn, which basically just modifies the saturation a little bit with it. And if you want to bring the vignette in a little bit, you can change the size of the ellipse path here to be just a little bit smaller, and that'll bring it in. And let me turn up the blurriness a little bit to like 500. There you go, and you can even make this an effect preset if you wanted. You can watch my tutorial on effect presets in Adobe After Effects. I'll have it linked in the end screen of this video, so that you can quickly apply this vignette. And then I just play around with the opacity, probably around 50% for this, right there. And as you can see, there you go, that's the color grade. And I wonder how similar it is to because it's always different a little bit each time. Okay, it's a tad different. I think I applied more pop on the original color grade. Yeah, I applied some more pop to it. But that's pretty much the main difference. It looks more or less similar. So there you go. That's how I do my color grading. I'm sure lots of other people have different ways of doing it, but that's just my way. Hopefully it was helpful. And yeah, just remember, subtlety is key. Don't overdo it because, I don't know, it's like spicing your food. It's easy to overspice, but to really nail that sweet spot, you have to just take everything in moderation. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow for another hashtag Daily Tut. And as always, take it easy, stay safe, buckle your seatbelt. That's what the Odd Ones Out says, I think, but I think it's kind of funny. That's enough rambling for me. Anyways, take it easy. See you guys tomorrow, and peace.